Hey, Arthur here. Happy Halloween, and it's time to talk about horror movies. Why do they suck? Not just horror movies, but the entire media, but special movies, right? Movies are the worst. And this is a bloody tragedy because horror is one of my favorite genres. It's the one that offers the most creativity. It's the one that has the least constraints. You can have military horror, ghost, monsters. You can have it in the past, torture, human, psychological, mystery, sci-fi. Not only are you not bounded by the setting, horror is the one where artists can most easily break expectations. They can do whatever they want. Now, sadly, although there are a few absolute masterpieces, these masterpieces grow a cult following after their release because they usually do really bad on box office. And almost everything we get is mostly all trash. And I think this is a new trend. I recently discovered the history of horror movies. So I recently discovered that horror is divided in eras. First, we have the Golden Age with the black and white oldie monsters, then the Silver Age in the 60s with classics like The War of the Worlds. And they are far better than I thought. I always thought these old movies, there's no way they're scary, but they seem to be far more in-depth and profound than everything we have nowadays. If you want to know more, I recommend Cinemassacre with James, the original angry video game nerd. He has an amazing channel on all the old horror movies. After the Silver Age, we have the slasher era, which if you are somewhere around my age, this is your introduction to horror. And from this point until today, I think all horror movies are terrible for one main reason. They don't have a magic system. Now, you probably like some slasher films. I like a lot of slasher films. And this is where we get this out of the way. Just because we like something, it doesn't mean that is good. I go out with the guys, we drink some shit beer, we have a good time. Just because we're having a good time, it doesn't mean the beer is not shit. And that's what happens with most horror movies. In summary, so we can get to the real point of the video, I think there's three things you should look at in a horror film. Does it have a memorable character? Like Ripley from Alien and Aliens. We remember the monsters, but we almost never remember the people. So, you don't remember the person, that's a bad movie. 2, do you remember the plot? The story in general. Can you summarize the story? Does the story stay with you? You can summarize a 2-hour movie in like the 2-minute like little story plot, but does it stay with you? Or does it just blend along with all the other horror movies that they're all the same? And finally, an idea. Does the movie leave an idea in your mind, an unsettling idea that doesn't let you sleep? Even years after you watch a movie, the idea stays with you. If you have any one of these three things, it's a pretty good horror movie because we have a low standard. If you have all three things, you have a masterpiece. Like Alien. I think Alien does all three just fine. Now I have to quickly mention this. Nowadays, we have movies like this. They are absolutely horrible. They have really bad production values. Many times they have horrible reception. The audience hates it, critics hate it, but they make like 10 or 100 times its production value. So as long as it's profitable, we're still going to have shitty movies. So just don't watch this in the movie theater. Now, I argue that the biggest problem with horror is that they don't properly define their magic system. Magic system, I will summarize it as fast as possible. It is the rules of the world. So if you're writing a drama, if your story it's a normal drama, everyday drama, the magic system are the same physical rules of our world. And they're limited by the technology, what people can and cannot do. If you're writing The Lord of the Rings, a fantasy, where there is actual magic and wizards, the magic system is the limitations of what people can and cannot do. Right? You live in a world where people can magically communicate telepathically. Well, there are limits to what they cannot do. How does it work, and how does this affect the fictional world? If you write sci-fi, that is also magic system. We call it technology, but it's the same thing. It's like magical machine that can make stuff that we cannot do in our world, but it has limitations. Magic system is the reason why I like Harry Potter at the beginning and why I stopped reading Harry Potter. At the beginning, you start to discover this new magical world. Harry discovers the world along with the reader. And there's many things that you don't know, but you understand that this magical world has rules and limitations. You learn how their money works, how their school works, how their society works. And everything makes sense until it doesn't. And that's when I stopped reading Harry Potter. When you start to realize, okay, if in this magical world they can do this, why they don't just solve the problem with this other magical thing that they already explained how it works? So that is, Harry Potter still works because Harry Potter is not fantasy, it's a mystery. So the mystery is still good, but as a fantasy, the longer you read Harry Potter, the worse it gets. But horror depends entirely on the fantasy. And now I am going to trash an all-time favorite. Is this really a good movie? I used to think yes, now I'm not so sure. Now, The Exorcist is an absolutely amazing movie. I would not dare say it's a bad movie. The internet community would kill me. It is certainly good. Go watch it. It made it into the annals of horror. It changed how we see things. It's just with time, I started to change my opinion on this. You see, horror has many techniques. They create suspense. They create tension in the audience. They make a sense of the uncanny. They have gore. And they have shock value. These are techniques added into horror. But beneath these techniques, there should be something more substantial, something that stays with you. The character, the story, and the idea. And the way you build this is with a magic system. And I realized that most of the Western horror doesn't have a magic system after I started watching way too many Eastern horror movies. These two are the Western versions of famous Japanese horror movies. Now, The Ring is really, really good. They have a clear magic system. They explain how the monster works, the limitations, how to kill it. It could have been better, but it's good enough. The Grudge is really scary the first time you watch it, but it's a really bad movie. It was watching The Grudge, all the Japanese versions. I've watched the Western versions, and now that I live in Asia, I've watched all the Asian horror. And watching the Asian horror, I realized that after I get past the shock value, there's nothing there. And these movies are not memorable. And they're really, really boring. Once you get used to the shock value, there's nothing to them. Because they don't have a magic system. They do not explain the limitations of the world. There's no foundation. There's no explanation of where these things come from. What are the rules? How do you stop them? How would the main character stop the monster? This is incredibly important for all horror. Now, you don't have to spell it out. it can be a mystery. You don't even have to show it in the movie. It's just that when you watch, especially in books, when you watch movie, but especially in books, because I write horror. When I read a horror book, or in my own horror books, there's many things that I never explain in the book. But that doesn't mean they're not there. The monsters, the creatures, the setting, there are rules to what they can and cannot do. I don't spell everything out, but a clever reader can figure it out through its behavior. And I leave tips and things in there. And even if you don't spell it out, a person, a reader, the audience, they can immediately tell if this makes sense, or they are just pushing your shock value or your own personal beliefs. Now, Asian movies are extremely good at creating a sense of uncanny. That's why they're so scary. When a Westerner watches a Japanese horror movie for the first time, it is absolutely horrifying because it's weird, it's uncanny, right? Everything looks like a normal house, but you can feel there's something off. And most monsters in Asian movies are all ghosts, and they're not creepy ghosts with a creepy face that is rotting away. The shock value in Asian movies is not in something gory, but something just uncanny. The ghost moves weird. The eyes look a little bit off. So they really, really shock you, especially when it's the first time you watch them. But if you watch a bunch of them, you get used to it. And then after the shock value, the uncanny, the strange, all there is to horror Asian movies is like super stupid superstitions. So stupid that when I watch horror movie in Asia, I think it's mostly funny instead of being scary. Because all Asian movies, they're the same. Somebody died, is the ghost comes back for revenge, and there are no rules, there's no magic system. It's just, there's simply, every time somebody dies in a horrible way, there's a ghost. And when you think about it, it makes no sense. The world would be full of ghosts. Why is this one so pissed off? And in Asian movies, there's no way of stopping them. It's just, they are pissed off, they're going to kill everybody forever. And when you realize that all of these ghost stories, they have their foundation on superstitions, like really old superstitions, like really old and so stupid that they're laughable. And when you understand them, it's just not scary at all. And then when I bring the exact same concept into Western horror, the same thing happens. Now, the big problem in Western movies is the religious undertone. It's okay to have a horror movie about religion, like Constantine, the comic book, where it's an exorcist who fights demons and stuff, but they fully develop the fantasy. Like, imagine you live in a world where demons are real. So that makes sense if you fully explain the mythology of this religious horror world. That would be greatly successful. But most Western movies, they just have like spooky stuff and because the devil. So the problem is that most horror films, they prey on people's social and cultural fears, but the movie itself, it absolutely sucks. The Exorcist is not so bad. It kind of explains the fictional world where it happens, and that's the important thing. Everything is fiction. You have to explain the fictional world where this is happening. And people believe it. People want to believe these things because they want to be entertained. You go to watch movie Lord of the Rings and you want to be entertained. You want to be immersed in this fictional world. When we watch horror, it's the same thing. but preying on people's like social fears. It's successful in the short term, but it makes really crappy movies. When people in Asia are super superstitious about dead people and ghosts, if you look at their superstitions and you say, oh, that's really stupid, their movies are not scary. If you're not afraid of ghosts because you think, oh, ghosts are like really stupid, and if you don't believe in hell and the devil because it's like really, really stupid, most Western movies make no bloody sense. Especially when it's not the main topic of the movie, and those are the worst horror movies. Okay, here are two horror movies that I thought they were kind of good at the beginning, and by the end of the movie I was laughing and they totally pissed me off. They are not religious movies at face value, but that's the problem at the end of the movie. These last two movies are the perfect example of everything that is wrong in modern movies. They do many things right. They create an interesting setting. They create tension. They have a feeling of uncanniness. There's a mystery you want to solve. They develop the movie, and halfway to the climax of the movie, they just throw everything away and say, oh, God is angry, it's a ghost, it's the devil. They bring a real fear that a society has. They bring a fear from the outside world, and they just throw it in the movie as the explanation. Their ghost is not consistent, their monster is not consistent with the fiction they are creating. You have final battles in all these horror movies where you have absolutely no idea what the hero can or cannot do. You don't know the rules. You don't know how can he defeat the monster. It's just random stuff happens, spooky stuff on the screen. You're supposed to be afraid, and mostly I just think it's ridiculous. Now, this is a recent movie that almost got it right. And here is another movie that a lot of people hate, and I like it because they almost got it right. Okay, I recommend both movies. Both movies are almost amazing. Okay, they create tension, uncanny feeling, blah blah, the mystery. They do everything right. Now here's the thing, they slowly start to explain the magic system, like in a quiet place. You understand from the very beginning that they cannot make any noises. That's simple enough. And they keep elaborating. Like you see how they live not to make any noises, how they make this special room to have a baby, and go watch it. I won't spoil it for you. In signs, they start to listen to noises from outside. They read the book about aliens. You kind of start to get an idea of what they can and cannot do. In signs, they explain they're not going to use their super advanced technology because reasons. It doesn't matter. They're explaining the magic system. You are into the movie. The problem with both of them is that you finish watching the movie, you are driving home, or you're sitting in bed, and then you realize, wow, that was like super stupid. They did everything right, but they have a super stupid magic system. You go back home and you start to think, well, why didn't do this? Why didn't they do that? Like within the fiction that they created, there's so many things that they could do. Most problems are non-problems because they didn't create a rational magic system. Finally, this is my recommendation for Halloween. You have to watch In the Mouth of Madness in the middle. It is amazing. It's a real tragedy. They didn't have enough money, but it's an extraordinary movie. And these three, they are the perfect example of everything done right. You should have seen The Thing. You probably have seen The Mist. They are really famous. If you haven't, you have to. Even if you don't like horror, they are amazing. Everybody knows the main character. Everybody knows Kurt Russell. Everybody knows the story of The Thing, and there is the idea. The idea stays with you. They have really powerful ideas. The Thing and The Mist, they have an idea that stays with you. What if the unknown comes here? What is beyond? We're insignificant in the universe. There's the idea of people. Maybe the people in here are scarier than the monsters out there. And all these three movies, I think they work because they have a very clear magic system. They explain the rules. In The Thing, you learn how the monster works, how it copies people. In The Mist, they do it perfectly well. There's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of unknown details about the monsters beyond, but you know just enough to follow this story, and you are left with the curiosity because you know there's more to it, you just don't know about it. So watch In the Mouth of Madness, and if you want more amazing horror, you can read my novel, Jaws of Madness. It's only 99 cents on Amazon Kindle. Thank you for listening. See you next time.